welcome to IMSTA FESTA 2021. Thank you so much for joining us this year. I'm Marie Lim, and I'm a music technologist and a Bitwig certified trainer. I'm also an artist, writer, producer, and performer, and I make electronic music under my solo artist project, Dolltrick. The music that you're hearing now was made in Bitwig Studio 4. I'm really excited to be sharing with you about it today because it's one of my favorite programs to be creative in. So in this video, we'll start by giving ourselves an overview of Bitwig and how its key features work. I'll walk you through one process that you can try out to put together a quick song sketch in Bitwig. This is the same process that I often go through myself when I'm using Bitwig to generate my musical ideas for Dolltrick. So I tend to think of this as a focused jam session of sorts where you can sit down and you can spend a relatively short amount of time with Bitwig, but at the end walk away with an arrangement that you can turn into a bigger musical idea. So let's get started. So welcome to Bitwig. Here we are. We have our home screen. This is the Bitwig dashboard. I just started up the software, and before we get our hands into Bitwig itself, let's do a quick overview of the software's main features and how everything works. We're going to use a template that's called Performance Set right over here. And it says play loops in the clip launcher, explore the browser, and add your own sounds. Even though it says performance, I love using this project even as a production starting point, which I'll explain a little bit more of in a moment, but let's go ahead and open up this template. So here is our template project, and immediately we can see to the left that this is not empty. We've already got colored material over here, and before we dive more into the exact contents of the project, let's just take a listen to what this sounds like, right? Who knows what it sounds like? So I'll click on a few things and let's just see what happens. So that's what this project sounds like. It's pretty neat. Now let's investigate what actually is going on. So these colored boxes that we see over here to the left are what we call clips. And we can think of clips as units of musical ideas for different instruments. So it could be drums or synths, guitar recordings, almost like musical Lego blocks of sorts. In Bitwig, we can organize our clips in the clip launcher, which is what we see over here, this particular section. And when we have clips in the launcher, we can choose to play and stop them at pretty much any time that we want to. And we can put clips into these slots that we see over here by either creating them ourselves from scratch, or we can also pull clips in from the Bitwig browser. And speaking of the browser, for example, if I want to quickly throw in some kind of extra, maybe tambourine loop, right? I can pull up the browser by clicking on the browser icon, which is this little folder over here. So let's show the browser panel. Now from the browser panel, I can go all the way to the top and click on this little icon that looks a little bit like a waveform to search for samples. Now I'll just type in a loop into the search bar, and let's also do TAMB for tambourine, and it looks like we have a couple of them here. Let's go ahead and drag and drop it over here into the empty space inside the clip launcher at the bottom below the last track. Bitwig will automatically create a new track and have a new clip slot that we can populate with the clip. So now let's go ahead and make sure that the metronome inside Bitwig is turned on, and I'm just gonna go ahead and play overall this project. Let's see if our tambourine loop is synced up or not. Here we go. Here's the click and tambourine. So it does line up. That's awesome. And that's a part of why I love using loops also from Bitwig in the browser. It starts getting really easy to piece parts together. Back to clips though. So any clip slot that is populated will have a tiny little sideways triangle on the top left, which you just saw me use as well. And if you click on that, it'll play the clip. Now, if I want to jump to another clip on the same track, if I have multiple clips in the same track, I can just click on another clip as well. Or I can also stop a clip by clicking on a square that's also in the same track, in the same row. What if I want to play multiple clips across different tracks? Something else that we see, apart from the rows going across, are these vertical columns over here. And these are what we call scenes. It's great to group different types of clips that go together in the same scene. So for example, over here in scene 4, at a glance, we can kind of tell that it's the most populated scene because it has the most number of clips. So maybe this might be the scene that corresponds to, say, a chorus of a song. And I can also stay organized by renaming scenes. So if I click on this scene over here, and on the right-hand side, I'll click on this little eye icon on the bottom right, so that instead of the browser, I'm showing the inspector panel. I can now rename this scene. So let's call it maybe chorus, and we'll see the name update. And we can even recolor it too. So I can color it red. Maybe red is like, oh, this is a big moment. So it's a good visual indicator for me to say, hey, that's the chorus. A scene also has its own launch button, right? You've got the play button there. So let's see what happens if I click on it. We'll probably be able to hear the whole scene play simultaneously. Let's unsolo the bass, and here we go. Cool, sounding great. And you might have noticed that to stop all of the active clips at once and have them end at the nearest bar together, I clicked on the square button on the top left of the launcher. And as we were playing the clips, you may have also noticed that there were certain white lines going across. Now, the reason why some of the lines moved at different speeds is because these clips were at different lengths. So even though they were in a single scene, for example, this pad clip over here is 16 bars long. And how I know that is in the inspector on the right, there's a specific parameter section that says length, and 16 is the number that we see, so 16 bars. But if I click on the percussion clip, that one was 2 bars long. So we do have the ability to mix and match different patterns and motifs even within a scene. But if we have ideas like these, how do we then get them into a more structured type of song form, right? More specifically, some kind of linear one. That's where the arranger section over here to the right comes in handy. And the arranged timeline is a linear environment that's maybe a little bit more similar to what we might think of as a traditional environment inside a DAW, with time moving from left to right. Let's go back to the start of the arranger timeline though, and what I like to do is record a sequence of ideas using the clips and scenes that are currently in the launcher. Whenever we are ready, I'll click on the circular button right at the top of Bitwig over here, which will let us record into the arrangement. And let's see what we get. And that's some basic arrangement recording by clicking different kinds of scenes and clips from the clip launcher and recording them into the arranger timeline. So let's go a little further now and use this template that we have over here to make a different song sketch. Let's first begin though by getting rid of all the material in the project for now. So I'll delete the scenes in the clip launcher over here, and we will delete all of the material that we have. So I'm just going to select and click and drag over all of this and press the backspace button to clear it all out. Now, the reason why I like starting with this template, even though I got rid of everything, is that a lot of the sounds over here, these tracks, are a really great guide for figuring out the instrument parts that go into a song. If we take a look at the tracks on the left, most productions that you listen to will have similar broad categories of sounds, and I generally think of them as drums, bass, harmony, melody, and effects. I'm going to do a little bit of organization for this template. So first, I think I might get rid of the polysynth track because we already have other chord tracks, 2 other chord tracks. So let's go ahead and click on that and press backspace or delete. Let's do the same thing as well for percussion. I actually do want to add on 3 more audio tracks. So let's use the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-T or Control-Shift-T to insert a new audio track, and I'll rename this first one FX. as a placeholder for any kinds of effects I want to do later on. Let's also put in another track. This one we will call vocal chop, because I think it might be cool to do some vocal chops. And one more audio track. Let's call this one vocal lead. And I may not record into this one, but I do want to keep it there as a little bit of a placeholder to remind me that eventually I probably want to record some kind of vocal and put it into my song sketch too. And now we're ready to go with generating some parts. So let's first begin by creating some new drums. One benefit of working with drums that I really like is that a drum groove often helps me to give a clearer idea, or get a clearer vision really, of what a song is going to sound like in terms of its overall rhythm. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking of something a little bit half-timey. Doom da, doom da doom da, doom doom da. So kind of thinking a little bit of this groove and tempo, I'm gonna right click or control click on the play button in Bitwig, the sideways triangle, and that's gonna let me tap in my tempo. So here we go, let's tap it in. Tap, 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 tap. Ah, okay, cool. So Bitwig is telling me now that that groove I was thinking of was around 163.04 BPM. I don't necessarily want a decimal number for a BPM, so maybe let's make that a little bit of a nicer rounded number, perhaps 160. So I'll just double click on the tempo at the top of Bitwig, type in 160. Now let's create a new clip over here in this first clip slot of the drums track, which is currently empty, by double clicking. So now we've got an empty 1 bar clip. If we take a closer look at this, it is 4 beats long. I do think it might be nice to start with a little bit of a longer clip though. So in the inspector, let's make sure that we have the clip selected, and let's change the length, which we looked at just now as a parameter section, to 2. So now that we're in the MIDI editor, let's also make sure that we are in the drum editor view, which we can access by clicking on the top left of the MIDI editor over here. And this is going to let us see the individual names of each of the drum hits in this particular drum kit. I'm gonna also click on this drop down menu over here to select a different tool instead of my pointer. Let's go with the pen tool for now. And the reason why I love using the pen tool when I'm just quickly putting in ideas, penciling in ideas, if you will, is that it lets us control length and velocity of notes pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and put in that drum pattern that I articulated just now with the kicks and the claps. So let's put one over here. There's our clap over here, one kick here, one clap here. Let's also add in a couple of 8th note closed hi-hats, but this time I'm just gonna put in the first 4, and that's because I want to adjust the velocities to be a little bit more dynamic off the bat. So let's put the first hi-hat in, make it a little shorter as an 8th note, and let's also drag downwards with my mouse so that I can make its velocity a little shorter. And having a shorter velocity handle means that it'll be a little bit quieter with a lower velocity. I'd like the second hi-hat then to be a little gentler. The third hi-hat maybe slightly in between, so let's bring that up. And the last one also quite soft. Now let's switch back to our pointer tool that we were using just now, and I'm going to select my hi-hats by dragging over them, and we'll just duplicate them across the entire pattern. So let's use Command D or Control D to do that. While we're here, let's also adjust the kick drum velocities inside this lower velocity editor by clicking on this little handle, and let's drag that up. Same thing also over here so that our kick drums are really punchy and cut through. Now let's play this clip and take a listen. Nice, and that's a good simple pattern to begin with. So I'll right click on the clip inside the launcher section, and I'm gonna choose the option to double content. So we started with a 2-bar loop, but now we have a 4-bar loop. Yeah! 4 bars are great to work with too, because oftentimes a lot of song sections will involve groups of 4 bars, and it'll also give us a little bit more opportunity to create more variation, right? So we can throw in a couple of fills, maybe some extra drum hits here and there. So while I'm continuing to edit, what I'm going to do is play this clip back, and I'll see if I can add in some notes here and there while the clip is looping. Here we go. Great, so now we've got a more filled out drum clip. Now, one last thing I'd like to do in this drum clip for now is one of my favorite things to do in Bitwig 4. And I'm going to make a copy of all of the closed hi-hats. So let's select all of these by clicking on the HHCL part of the editor. That's going to select all of the notes for the closed hi-hat. And let's hold down Option or Alt, and we will click and drag them so that we have an exact copy on the open hi-hat row too. In many drum kits that are designed in Bitwig, they'll be structured in such a way that intentionally you can't play a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat at the same time. And that's because it mirrors a little bit of a real-life drum set. So if you were to see a drummer play live, they can only play either a closed or an open hi-hat at any point in time if they have just one hi-hat. So I love combining this design feature with the use of operators, which are new to Bitwig 4. And operators will let us control a little bit of how certain notes over here are triggered when we play them back. Specifically for the closed hi-hat, so let's reselect the closed hi-hat, I'd like to use the chance operator. So we can take a look at that over here in the inspector. It's on by default, and it's set to 100%, which means that there is a 100% chance that all of these notes will play all the time. But let's change this for now to 80%, and you'll also see some visual updates show up inside the MIDI editor panel. So this means that the hi-hats, the closed ones, will only have an 80% chance of playing, and when they don't play, we'll hear an open hi-hat instead. So this way, we'll get a little bit of a different type of variation. Let's see if we can play the clip and take a listen. Cool, nice. The neat thing about this is that each time the clip plays, the variations are different, right? Because sometimes a note plays, sometimes it doesn't. So I have an infinite number of variations to keep things interesting in my drum programming. Speaking about variations, I'd also like to create some quick clip variations. So let's hold down Option or Alt again, and we will click and drag this clip to the right over here. Now in this clip, let's create a variation. Perhaps let's take away all of our hi-hats for this, as well as our cymbal at the top. Let's create an additional variation of this clip. So Option or Alt, click and drag to a new scene. And let's maybe in this one take away all of the other sounds apart from the kick. Let's do the inverse of that in another clip, but let's copy from the original clip. So again, Option or Alt, click and drag. Let's do nothing here in the kick. And maybe in our final variation, so Option or Alt, click and drag, let's just have the clap in this one. Great, so that way we have a couple of different variations to choose from when we start to arrange. So let's move on to harmony parts next. And I often do these after drums so that I can develop a chord progression, which we can then use to inform our bass and melody parts later on, but more on that soon. Let's double click to create a new clip. And now inside the MIDI editor, let's click on this icon over here to show the piano roll editor. Let's decide on a key, could be any key, and insert a note at that pitch. Perhaps we'll start over here in the middle range. Maybe let's do A2, so let's put that note over there. And let's maybe do an A major chord since we're here. So I'll hold down Option or Alt. Let's click and drag so that we get an A major triad. So we've got A, C sharp, and E. And what I'll often do when generating chord progressions is start with one chord per bar, for example, and then double content until we get a 4-bar loop and we can start moving the chords. So let's try that out. Now let's create some more A major chords. We'll double content. So now we have 4 A major chords. But I'm really just moving these chords around and experimenting with combinations that could sound good together. So here we go. Great, so I actually quite like this chord progression that I came up with. We've got A major as the first chord, D minor with an A in the bottom, so second inversion, and then F major and G major. To make things harmonically and rhythmically more interesting, let's copy this pad clip over to the keys track. So Option, click and drag, and you'll notice that it gets recolored automatically, which is really nice for organization. And instead of just leaving it as it is though, let's put in a MIDI device called an Arpeggiator. So now we'll solo the keys track so that we just focus on the sound over here. Let's just listen to it on its own. And that's that's okay, but let's pull up the device view to add that arpeggiator that I mentioned. So we'll go to the bottom of Bitwig and show the device panel over here. Let's click on the keys track. And since an arpeggiator is a MIDI effect, it's going to go before the instrument. Over here, our instrument is FM4. So we'll click on the plus button before FM4. And now we have the contextual browser. So let's type in ARP into the browser, and there it is. Great. Let's click on Arpeggiator and click OK to instantiate it. And now let's listen to the clip on its own. So as you heard, the arpeggiator has taken our chords and it's split up the notes so that instead of playing simultaneously, they play one after the other. And in this case, they're playing in 16th note rhythms. I can see that at the top of Arpeggiator. And you can click on this value and drag up and down to change to other values, but I think I quite like it at 16th note, so I'll leave that as it is for now. What I will change though is the octave of some of the notes in this particular clip so that they don't overlap too much in range with the frequencies of the pad. So let's play the clip back, and while we're listening, I'm going to select a few of these notes and I'll use Shift and the up arrow key to put them into a higher octave. So let's take a listen. Nice! Now let's move on to the bass. So when I'm developing a song sketch, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the reason why I love beginning with chords is that they can be a great starting point for what I call extraction. And that just really means once you have a chord progression, from there you can have some hints as to what notes could sound good for a bass and melody. So we can extract these parts from the chords. Let's go ahead and make a copy of the pad clip and put it in the bass track. And this time I'm just going to delete all of the notes apart from the bottom note of each chord. What we'll also do is select all of the notes and let's put them into a lower octave because bass parts are usually quite low, right? So Shift and the down arrow key this time to put them into a lower octave. Let's take a listen to the bass clip. Let's keep the bass fairly simple for now, so we'll leave it as that, but let's keep moving forward with the extraction. So we'll do the same thing for the melody parts. Let's make a duplicate of the pads clip and put it in the lead track. Now this time though, since we use the bottom notes just now for the bass part, let's delete the bottom notes here in the lead clip. And we'll use the top notes instead, so 2 of these notes per chord. Now I'm looking at my template and I'm remembering that, hey, I've got placeholder tracks here for potential vocal chops and a vocal lead. So this time when I'm working with this lead synth sound over here, I'm going to create a simple motif instead. So some kind of pattern that's functioning a little bit more as a background melody. And one type of motif that I often use quite a lot is just like a repeated 2-note type of thing, maybe on the offbeats. So let's use these notes to create something like that. I'll select all of the notes and I can do that very quickly by either dragging over all of them, or I can click anywhere inside the MIDI editor panel and press Command A or Control A, which will select everything. Now let's make them shorter by dragging in on the right hand side. Clicking on the right, drag them in to the left. Now with each of these upper notes, let's take each of them and shift them to the right over here so that they happen after the bottom note plays. And now for a little bit more variety, like I mentioned, it might be nice to have these on the offbeat. So let's select all of them again, Command or Control A. Let's use the right arrow key to shift them to the right. And then we'll use our favorite option or Alt, click and drag to make copies of them. So let's listen in context with the rest of the piece. Okay, but I'm wondering if we might be able to find maybe a different lead sound. So perhaps that's one that's more, appropriate for hanging out in the background instead of being so forward. So let's investigate how we can swap out some different sounds. Let's download the lead track so that we can focus on its sound. And at the moment, if I head over to the device panel again, I can see that this particular lead sound over here is an FM4 instrument, but maybe I want to swap out, a different type of lead sound. So if I head over to the folder I icon at the top of the title of this instrument, I can click on it and pop up the contextual browser again. And if I take a look at the right-hand side over here, all of these are different presets that I can potentially use to swap out the lead synth sound. So let's go ahead and play the clip, and while we're playing, we can click on different preset sounds to swap them out and audition them to see what they sound like. Great, so I ended up landing on this preset that's called Clock Strikes, and you may have noticed that while I was auditioning the sound, I started tweaking a few of these knobs on the instrument called macros. And these macros help us change the parameters of the sound. So I ended up making the sound a little bit shorter overall so that the notes weren't lingering on for too long, which could muddy up our idea. While we're on the topic of sounds, it might also be nice to have some kind of sound effect that helps us give a sense of, arrival at the start of this loop. So let's go ahead and unsolo the lead, and we'll head over to our FX track so that we can put in some type of effect. And this time, I'm just gonna click on the plus button directly inside the clip slot, which again will pop up the contextual browser. Let's type the word sweep into the search bar, and I think some kind of downward noise sweep might be a good fit. So let's go ahead and preview a few of these on the right-hand side. Cool, I think this PL Decimator Sweep FX might be quite a nice choice, so let's hit OK, and let's put that in there. Now let's launch the entire scene. Here we go. Now that we have this solid scene over here, let's arrange it into a whole piece. Now, one of the fastest ways that I love throwing together some kind of arrangement is through recording a performance of clips and scenes into the arranged timeline, much like we did earlier. And while I do that, I often consider the energy levels of whatever I'm recording. So I ask questions like, what parts layered together will be more exciting? Or which ones will be more mellow? And then, of course, we also want to consider the order of things, right? So how do we get from one energy level to the next? Are we introducing more ideas? And I'm going to use Launchpad X for this, but if you don't have a controller, you can also do this by manually clicking inside the clip launcher. So let's start from the beginning and let's go for it. Nice, so there's my arrangement, and like we did before, I can switch back to the playback for the arranger by clicking on that button, and there is my song sketch. So what I'll usually do once I've gotten to the stage is I will save my work one more time, so let's go ahead and save this, and then I will walk away from the computer and take a break. And I find it really important to rest the ears and the brain, and when I do, sometimes I come up with a new idea for a production that I want to try out, and I can head back into the project right away and continue to work with fresh ears, which is what we'll discuss a little bit more of in the next video, so stay tuned. So that was it for this video. Thank you so much for spending time with us, getting to know Bitwig and putting together this musical sketch. For more information and to download Bitwig Studio, you can head over to bitwig.com where you can download the latest version of Bitwig. We've got another Bitwig video for IMSTA FESTA lined up where I'll dive a little bit deeper into some more concepts. We'll explore some sound design using Bitwig's vocoder and micro-pitch devices. We'll take another look at Bitwig's operators, and we'll also work a little more with audio information through comping vocal takes. Once again, my name is Claire. I'm a Bitwig certified trainer, and as an artist, I go by Daltrick. Thank you so much for watching this IMSTA FESTA video. I hope you're having a great time, and see you soon.